Hey, sports card fans, it's John Wade Boggs fan. Hope you're all doing well. I'm back with another top 10 PSA vintage baseball card sales on eBay video, this time featuring cards from the 1930s and 1940s for February 2025. For the 1930s, it is an all Yankees top 10, featuring 3 different Yankees. Can you figure out which 3 Yankees are featured in the top 10 list? For the 1940s, there's a pretty good selection of cards that made the top 10 list, including some cards that you don't see very often. So let's get to the 2 top 10 lists. Starting off with the cards from the 1930s. At number 10, we have this 1939 play ball Joe DiMaggio in a PSA 6. This one sold on February 16th for $4,200. It was a buy it now. The current VCP average price for a PSA 6 is $4,204. The record high sale was $5,002 back in January of this year through Heritage. Now, there were 4 other 1939 play ball Joe DiMaggio sales in February. One was a PSA 3 copy that sold on February 6th for $2,295. A PSA 2 copy sold on February 8th for $2,056. A PSA 2.5 sold on February 13th for $1,913. And finally, another PSA 2.5 copy sold on February 11th for $1,800. At number 9, we have this 1933 Goudey Lou Gehrig card number 160 in the set in a PSA 2. This one sold on February 6th for $4,601. It was an auction. There were 47 bids. The current VCP average price for a PSA 2 is $3,890. The record high sale was $7,500 back in January of 2023 through PWCC. There was one other 1933 Goudey Lou Gehrig card number 160 sale in February of note. This one was a PSA 2 copy as well, sold on February 21st for $3,700. At number 8, we have this 1933 Goudey Babe Ruth card number 53 in the set in a PSA 1. This one sold on February 8th for $5,000. It was a best offer. The current VCP average price for a PSA 1 is $5,702. The record high sale was $19,200 back in April of 2023 through REA. There was one other 1933 Goudey Babe Ruth card number 53 sale in February. This one was a PSA 1 with a mark, sold on February 22nd for $4,800. At number 7, we have this 1933 Goudey Babe Ruth card number 144 in a PSA 1 mark. This one sold on February 24th for $5,936. It was an auction. There were 49 bids. The current VCP average price for a PSA 1 qualifier is $6,368. The record high sale was $7,000 back in April of 2021 through eBay. Now, there was one other 1933 Goudey Babe Ruth card number 144 sale in February. This one was an authentic altered copy that sold on February 6th for $5,500. At number 6, we have this 1933 Sports Kings Babe Ruth in a PSA 1.5. This one sold on February 25th for $6,000. It was a best offer. The current VCP average price for a PSA 1.5 is $3,660. This sale here at $6,000 would represent a new record high sale for a PSA 1.5 copy. The previous high was $5,640 back in June of 2021 through Heritage. At number 5, we have this 1933 Gaudy Babe Ruth card number 149 in a PSA 1. This one sold on February 21st for $6,102. It was an auction. There were 12 bids. The current VCP average price for a PSA 1 is $5,042. The record high sale, though, was $14,400 back in April of 2021 through Golden. At number 4, we have this 1933 Gaudy Lou Gehrig. This one is card number 92 in the set in a PSA 1. This one sold on February 23rd for $6,199. It was a buy it now. The current VCP average price for a PSA 1 is $2,546. So this sale here would represent a new record high sale for a PSA 1 copy. Although I should note that this sale was not reported in VCP's database, but according to eBay, it was a completed sale. The previous high for a PSA 1 was $4,200 back in April of 2022 through eBay. There were 4 other 1933 Gaudy Lou Gehrig card number 92 sales in February. We have a PSA 1 copy here selling on February 10th for $3,608. Another PSA 1 sold on February 14th for $3,209. A PSA 1.5 Mark sold on February 8th for $1,948. And finally, another PSA 1 copy sold on February 3rd for $1,800. It just goes to show that just because there's a certain number grade to a card, as you can tell, the eye appeal of a particular grade can vary dramatically in terms of the sale price of a card. At number 3, we have this 1938 Gaudy Joe DiMaggio in a PSA 2. This is the scribble version or the cartoon version. This one sold on February 2nd for $6,877. It was an auction. There were 58 bids. The current VCP average price for a PSA 2 is $6,877. And this does represent a new record high sale for a PSA 2 copy. The previous high was $3,834 back in April of 2021 through eBay. Now, there was one other 1938 Gaudy Joe DiMaggio sale in February. This one, a non-scribble version in a PSA 3 that sold on February 23rd for $6,750. At number 2, we have this 1933 Worldwide Gum Babe Ruth in a PSA 2. This one sold on February 23rd for $8,000. It was a best offer. The current VCP average price for PSA 2 is $10,000, and that is the record high sale reached in July of 2022 through eBay. And there was one other 1933 Worldwide Gum Babe Ruth sale in February. This one, a PSA 1.5 copy, sold on February 24th for $7,700. And at number 1 for the 1930s for February, we have this 1933 Gaudy Babe Ruth card number 181 in the set, sold on February 14th for $12,200. It was a best offer. The current VCP average price for a PSA 3 is $11,285. The record high sale was $17,520 back in January of 2022 through eBay. And there was one other 33 Gaudy Babe Ruth card number 181 sale in February. This one was a PSA 1 copy that sold on February 28th for $6,500. All right, on to the top 10 sales for cards from the 1940s. At number 10, we have this 1946 Propagandist Montiel Ted Williams in a PSA 2. This one sold on February 19th for $2,650. It was an auction. There were 42 bids. The current VCP average price for a PSA 2 is $3,380. The record high sale was $4,110 back in September of 2024 through Mile High. At number 9, we have this 1948 R346 Blue Tint Jackie Robinson in a PSA 2. This one sold on February 20th for $2,805. It was a best offer. The current VCP average price for a PSA 2 is $1,250. So this sale here would represent a new record high sale for a PSA 2 copy. The previous high was $1,250 back in December of 2020 through eBay. At number 8, we have this 1949 Leaf Stan Musial in a PSA 4. This one sold on February 9th for $3,095. It was a buy it now. The current VCP average price for a PSA 4 is $2,974. The record high sale was $6,097 back in March of 2022 through Mile High. Now, there were two other 1949 Leaf Stan Musial sales in February of note. One was another PSA 4 copy that sold on February 12th for $2,781, and a PSA 3 copy sold on February 21st for $1,900. At number 7, we have this 1941 Playball Ted Williams in a PSA 6. This one sold on February 1st for $4,000. It was a best offer. The current VCP average price for a PSA 6 is $3,086. The record high sale for a PSA 6 was $4,680 back in July of 2022 through Heritage. At number 6, we have this 1946 Propagandist Montiel Stan Musial in a PSA 1. This one sold on February 19th for $5,000. It was a best offer. The current VCP average price for a PSA 1 is $5,780. The record high sale, though, was $8,000 back in February of 2021 through Heritage. At number 5, we have this 1949 Leaf Larry Doby in a PSA 4. This is a short print card in the set. This one sold on February 28th for $6,750. It was a buy it now. The current VCP average price for a PSA 4 is $6,000, so this sale here at $6,750 would represent a new record high sale for a PSA 4 copy. The previous high was that $6,000 sale back in January of 2024 through REA. At number 4, we have this 1940 Playball Joe DiMaggio in a PSA 7. This one sold on February 16th for $6,988. It was an auction. There were 42 bids, but came in way below the current VCP average price for a PSA 7 of $10,169. If you take a close look at that card, it is in a very old slab, and those corners and maybe a bit of the surface would seem to indicate that if that card were to be regraded today, it would not come in at a PSA 7 in my opinion. Hence, probably the sale at under $7,000 when other PSA 7s are slightly over $10,000. The record high sale for a PSA 7 was $15,301 back in January of 2023 through eBay. At number 3, we have this 1949 Leaf Babe Ruth in a PSA 5. This one sold on February 11th for $6,999. It was an auction. There was only one bidder. The current VCP average price for a PSA 5 is $7,004, so right at this sale price here. The record high sale, though, for PSA 5 was $15,180 back in April of 2021 through SCP auctions. Now, there were 4 other 1949 Leaf Babe Ruth sales of note in February. A PSA 4 copy sold on February 25th for $5,395. A PSA 1.5 copy sold on February 11th for $5,000. An authentic altered copy sold on February 4th for $3,138. And finally, a PSA 1 copy sold on February 10th for $2,660. At number 2, we have this 1949 Bowman Satchel Paige in a PSA 6. This one sold on February 16th for $8,490. It was an auction. There were 44 bids. The current VCP average price for a PSA 6 is $8,434. The record high sale for a PSA 6 was $11,750 back in June of 2023 through eBay. Now, there were 4 other 1949 Bowman Satchel Paige sales in February of note. One was a PSA 3 copy that sold on February 3rd for $4,050. Another PSA 3 copy sold on February 17th for $4,000. A PSA 1 copy sold on February 13th for $3,138. And finally, a PSA 1.5 copy sold on February 25th for $2,995. And for the number 1 card sale in February for the 1940s, we have this 1949 Leaf Jackie Robinson in a PSA 3.5. This one sold on February 14th for $13,000. It was a buy it now. The current VCP average price for a PSA 3.5 is $12,761. The record high sale, though, was $32,400 back in March of 2021 through Heritage. Now, there were 3 other significant 1949 Leaf Jackie Robinson sales in February. One was a PSA 3 copy that sold on February 3rd for $10,200. Another PSA 3 copy sold on February 27th for $9,102. And finally, a PSA 1 copy sold on February 3rd for $6,400. Well, there you go, the top 10 PSA vintage baseball card sales on eBay for the month of February 2025 for cards from the 1930s and 1940s. As always, would love to know in the comments what you think about the cards that made the 2 top 10 lists. And with that, that's all I have for you. So until next time, thanks for watching.